Good evening and welcome to our regular scheduled select board meeting Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. It's now past the time of 7 at 7:02. This meeting we will call to order. Let us all stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on our agenda tonight is the public hearing for tax classification for determination of residential factor for the tax rate. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion to open the tax classification public hearing.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have a vote 4-0-0. Tonight,
Volume two, please.
we'll try to speak louder. Patrick can work on that.
Thank you very much.
I will try to speak louder.
Yes. All right. And tonight we have our public hearing for the tax classification. There are a number of members of the town in our audience. And when you come up to speak, we'll ask that you keep your comments to make sure that they stay on topic and to about 3 minutes apiece so that we have the time to allow everyone to speak that would like to speak. Dennis, would you like to come forward or we're going to go with Jack to come forward and we'll have Dennis here to answer any questions that may have. And Jack.
Thank you.
All set?
All right, I think we all have it.
Okay. Well, thank you for having us. It's always a pleasure, okay, in this yearly meeting. The purpose of this public hearing is, honestly, it's the last major step in a year-long process to take us to where we get a tax rate that's certified by the state, and then we can go ahead and send out tax bills, final tax bills for the third and fourth quarter. All right, and just a couple of the introductory notes. One of the questions that people ask a lot is, how do you determine what my property tax is going to be? And there are really three separate things that go into that. One is, what are the planned expenditures? That is decided by town meeting, okay? That is determined, the amount of money that's going to be raised for expenditures is determined by town meeting, all right? Then what we do, the Board of Assessors, is we go ahead and we determine the assessed value based upon state guidelines and state oversight as to what the valuation is of each individual property, real estate and personal property in the town of Walpole. And then we get a total assessed value for the town. And then finally, we have this hearing, which sets what's known as the residential factor. It's more commonly thought of as the residential shift, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's what we're really making the decision tonight. We'll make a recommendation, but it's your policy decision as to what the residential factor will be. And so if you look at the package that we had sent out, I think a week and a half or so ago, a couple of things down at the bottom that are really important. The average single family assessment, it's gone up 10%, almost 11% in the last year. Okay. The average single tax bill at the current shift, that doesn't mean that that's what will be the shift at the end of the evening, but at the current shift, the average single tax bill will go up 5.77% from approximately $9,200 to approximately $9,700, an increase of about $531. We currently have a tax shift of 1.275. What that does is that effectively reduces the average residential tax rate by $368. The increase on the commercial side, industrial side, personal property side is significantly more than that because so much of Walpole's valuation is into the residential side. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but right now, without a shift, it's around it's over 88% residential. Okay. Of this increase, what's important to note if you look at that single-family average tax bill increase of $531, about $385 of that is due strictly to the override for the Bryn Middle School. So those are just some facts that, just to keep in mind as we're going through the discussions. I'm not going to go through this page by page unless you want me to. I'm going to call out some highlights on some of the pages, and if you look, for example, on page 2, it explains what is actually the residential factor. In simple terms, what it is, it's the weighted reciprocal of the tax rate, of the shift that you're talking about. So you're not going to actually vote on a shift. You're going to vote on a residential factor, and I'll give you that number once you decide what you want for a shift. Okay. Page 3 is interesting because what that does is this gives you the total assessed value in that column B. All right. And in Walpole, the total assessed value of all property is $6,725,000 and change. Okay. Over $5 billion of that is residential. Okay. On page 4, what's key is if you look at the table at the bottom where it has the different classes of properties, and it has the different the total valuations, which by the way has been certified by the state. Okay, with no shift, residential makes up 88.34% of all the valuation in Walpole. With a shift, the current shift, it's 85.14%. Walpole is overwhelmingly residential. I think we understand that, but this is in black and white. Over 88% of our residential factor, over 88% of the value is due to residential without the shift. That's significant. Okay. There's a little bit on Proposition 2.5. Basically, we are limited as to how much you can increase the taxes in the course of a year. It's what your valuation was last year, plus 2.5%, plus new growth, plus any overrides. Okay, people say, well, you know, does 2.5 mean my tax bill can only go up 2.5%? No. What it means is that the total tax levy, the amount that can be raised by taxes, can go up by 2.5%, plus any new growth, plus any overrides. And that's important to keep in mind. On page 7, one of the things that we've been asked many times in the past is, what is actually out there right now in overrides? Debt exclusion. And these are the 7 different projects that the town has approved in the past for overrides. And you can see when that override started, whether it's permanent or temporary, and what the debt service is in the next year. Next page, on page 8, new growth. As I mentioned, you can increase the tax levy by new growth. New growth, it says right up at the top, what is new growth? It's property that's subject to taxation for the first time. It's being taxed as a separate parcel if we had something that was a lot split. And if there's been an increase in valuation, but not due to the revaluation project, but any revaluation program, but because of the fact that they did an improvement on the property. Okay, so if you've improved your property, if it's a new property, then you can go ahead and that counts into new growth. It's over and above 2.5, so the state takes a very, very careful look at what we put in for new growth. And the whole process is we put a number in early in the year, and we update that several times over the course of the year for budgetary purposes. But it's not certified. That's one of the last things to get certified is new growth. On page 11, this is what we'll be voting, what we'll be asking you to vote on. You get the shift, which is in the first column, and then you get the residential factor, which is in the second column. And we can go from anywhere from a shift from 1 to 1.0 to 1.5. And this lays out exactly what the shift is and what the residential factor that you'd vote on to accompany that shift. Page 13 This is one of the key ones everybody's interested in. What this does is this lays out where we are with taxation for different shifts. So for example, if you did not have, if we had chose a shift equal to what we had last year, all right, then our average assessed value is $734,653. With the shift of 1.275, your tax rate would be 13.27. The tax bill would be $9,749. That'd be an increase of $531 or 5.77%. And then if you had different shifts, for example, if you went to 1.4, then that would be a tax rate of $13.04. The tax bill would be $9,580 with an increase of $362 or 3.93%. So this gives you all the different scenarios that you could possibly want to take a look at. That's on page 13. On page 17, we have the same chart for commercial and industrial properties. So for 2024, if we use the same shift that we had last year at an average assessed commercial property of $1,271,271, the tax rate would be $17.56. The average tax bill would be $22,324, and that would result in a decrease in taxes of $85 or just a little under 0.4%. Industrials, same calculation, same tax rate, because the industrials have a slightly lower assessed value, their increase in the tax bill would be $11 or a little bit under 0.1%. So that allows you to compare different scenarios with different shifts for the three different kinds of properties that you're concerned about. If you go to page 20, one of the things we're often asked is who are the biggest taxpayers in Walpole? And this lists it out for you. Instar Eversource is by far the largest at $2.2 million. Siemens, the big plant over on Route 1, I'm sorry, on 95 is $1.4 million. And so you can see right away what the story is with the largest taxpayers. On page 29, one of the questions we sometimes are asked, what kinds of exemptions do we give out? What kind of help is available to the taxpayers in Walpole? And this lists them by type of exemption. On top of this, there's a possibility for deferrals, but we don't seem to have many deferrals this year. Finally, one of the things that we're asked about sometimes is with the residential exemption. We want to adopt the residential exemption. A couple of notes about residential exemptions. It doesn't reduce the tax levy. What it does is it just shifts the tax burden between different classes of residential property. Basically, the lower paying tax rate, lower paying taxpayers pay less, and those taxes get shifted to the higher, more expensive properties in town. But it's only within the residential category of properties. And then finally, on page 37, we're sometimes asked about the commercial exemption. What's key is it's for small businesses. And so what happens is only small businesses, and it's in the second paragraph that defines it, you have to have less than 10 people and a total valuation of less than $1 million in order to be able to qualify for it. So that's the data package. Okay, our board, we've reviewed it, we've discussed it at length, and we're prepared to make a recommendation by a 2-to-1 vote of a 1.3 shift for next year that you consider. The key thing, one of the key things that you need to consider is that for every dollar that you save an average taxpayer, you're going to increase the taxes for the commercial or industrial properties by about $8, simply because of the disparity between the number of residential properties and the number of commercial and industrial properties. So if you have any questions at all, I'll be happy to answer them. Dennis is here, the board members are here, and we'd entertain any questions or any help that you may need.
All right, Jack, thank you for going over this. There's so much information in here, and it does take a little bit, being my second year.
Okay.
It was much more, it was easier to understand this year, but I greatly appreciate it. And you kind of hit upon some of the questions that I certainly had as far as your recommendations. So the current residential tax rate remaining the same with that 1.25, right? Would be $13.20. We would reduce it if we went with the new shift of 1.3. So the current rate right now is 13.89.
I'm sorry,
The tax rate.
the current tax rate is $13.89.
And so if we went with a shift of 1.3, that would reduce to $13.22.
Yes.
So that's one thing to consider, but also, as you mentioned, for every dollar saved, there is an increase on the commercial industrial side. And Waffle, we have kept this shift the same for the last 9 years, correct?
I think it's 9 years.
I think we're at 9 years now that we've kept the
Sounds
same
about right.
shift.
That's actually, give me the page, give me a second. Page 23.
All right. So I think we've kept this for the last 9 years at this shift, this residential factor, or shift as we kind of call it, that 1.25. I spoke last year in favor of a slight increase, so I would be supporting the Board of Assessors in this recommendation of 1.3, but I certainly want to open this up to all board members to speak on this, and as well as this is a public hearing, so. Mark, Glenn, do we want to open it up to the audience, or would the board members like to speak first?
I'll go first. So likewise, I went back and looked at last year and how I thought about maintaining the shift at the 1.275. And what was apparent to me last year was one of the components of the business side of the equation, which was the industrial side, increased in value much more quickly than the residential side last year. And so in my mind, that was an implied shift, because by virtue of the fact that the property values went up faster than the residential, it would attract more of the tax levy. So when I think about that, and then I look at this year, I see the opposite occurring. So we see the residential side of the equation has gone up much more rapidly than the business side. And so in being consistent with the argument that I made last year, which was there's an implied shift, I'd see the same implied shift here on the residential side. And so my instincts tell me, although I'm generally opposed to pushing more taxes onto the business side of the house, because I really believe that we need to develop business, and I think this is an anti-business approach. But just given the nature of the increase and the fact that so much of it is attributed to the new middle school, it does seem to me as though moving the shift from the current 1.275 to the 1.3 makes a lot of sense. And so I'm supportive of the recommendation the Board of Assessors has brought forth for those reasons. Thanks, Ally.
I'll just jump in too. I mean, I'm actually not opposed to shifting some of the burden over to the commercial side, but I think what we need to do as a town is to increase our commercial tax base. So I'm actually concerned with the impact of, and I said this last year, and I'm just being consistent, with increasing the burden on the commercial side when really we're growing as on the residential side as a community. And so, we have over 88% of our town is residential, and so again, in order to save the average taxpayer $36, I think it is what it comes out to per year, $9 per quarter, we're going to have to shift $300 of burden over to a commercial taxpayer. Now, they'll pay the bill. They're not necessarily going to pack up and leave. but I'm just concerned about, again, being anti-business. I don't mind shifting, and I would love to grow our commercial tax base and be more like Norwood and some of these other towns on your list here, that Stoughton, that have just an incredible commercial tax base. A shift as minor as 1.275 to 1.3 isn't going to really even register to most of those, because there's so many commercial taxpayers, sharing that burden. And then I look at towns like Bellingham, which I think is more comparable to Walpole and Rentham, and they actually have slightly more commercial taxes than us, and their rate is about the same as us, is 1.26. So just my position generally is the same as last year. I don't think what you're proposing is anything crazy. I don't think, it's a very small shift, and I appreciate the fact that you're not doing anything, the Board of Assessors isn't proposing anything drastic, so I don't think it's going to be, do or die or anything like that, but I just don't think we're quite there as a community yet where we built up our commercial tax base. So I'm not entirely opposed to it, I'm very hesitant.
Yeah, so this was an issue we discussed last year, and we did hold the rate steady last year for the reasons that Jim O'Neill mentioned. I am in favor, we also talked last year about considering moving the rate up, shifting a little bit more of the burden over to the commercial industrial when the new middle school came online from an expense point of view, which is happening. So I am in favor of making the shift from 1.275 to 1.3. So I agree with the Board of Assessors.
Does anyone have any further questions for Jack or for Dennis?
I would just say thanks for getting us the package ahead of time. There's a lot of data there, so it was good to have it early and be able to dig through, so thank
I
you.
can't take responsibility for it. You need to-
I'm talking about the whole team, so yeah.
Certainly does. All right, well,
Okay, thank you.
thank you so much, and thank you for all the work that goes into this. Greatly appreciate it. That was-
Good evening. Dick Sicaro, Board Assessor member. First of all, I would like to thank Dennis and his staff. They did a fabulous job as usual. There's a lot of data here, as you can well see and appreciate. And also, it's a pleasure serving with my two fellow board members. I think they do a great job as well. I'd just like to add a few things. I think Select Person O'Neill's on the right track, and Mr. Gallivan as well, that the residents need a break and a shift. As our chairman, Jack, pointed out, it was a 2-1 vote, and I'll tell you why I voted against it. If you refer to the tax shift charts, specifically page 13 is the residential shift. So, if you vote on a shift from 1.275 to 1.30, the difference would be $495 for the residents. They would pay an increase. So, as you pointed out, it's a savings of like $9 a quarter. I personally was in favor of shift of 1.350%. That would save the residents at least $25 a quarter, be $102 a year. So the taxes would drop to $429. If you shift over to number, no pun intended, but if you go to page 17, and the reason for my methodology here and analysis, if you look at the same tax shift for commercial, okay, you're looking at 1.30, so the difference would be only $347, the increase on commercial properties. The change would only be 1.55%. So a shift that I recommend at 1.350% is more equitable between the residents and the commercial properties. It's close to 5.48, and residential will be 4.85. So that was my logic. I think most of it is attributed to the middle school, $381 of the 531 increase, and also the appreciation in home values. I mean, the market was fantastic. the average home assessed value increased $71,000. But as I always maintain, that's terrific if you're going to sell your property. If not, you're going to have to pay added taxes. So an increase of 5.71, unfortunately, as you point out, the residential tax base is 85% versus a little over 6 for commercial. So it's a huge increase, 5.71%. Inflation has been running on a monthly CPI index of about 4% a month. October it dropped to 3.33%. So that's about almost 200 basis points over the rate of inflation, and that's a national average. So once again, I would urge you to provide some form of tax relief for the people, especially for seniors and those on limited fixed incomes. So let's just throw out a few options, and I'll be real brief. You have the option of looking into freezing assessed property values and tax rates indefinitely through home rule petition, if there's state legislation in place that allows you to do so, similar to communities in Rhode Island, when you're 65 or older and have owned a property for 10 years or more. You have the option of providing a tax exemption credit for those whose assessed property value is below the average of $734,000. The way that works, they would get a little credit, tax break, and it would be tacked on to those people whose home values are over the $734,000. What I just discussed, I would call for a more fair and equitable tax shift of the 1.350 instead of 1.30. The state overcharged taxpayers. They had a huge surplus balance. They actually gave people a refund of $350 in checks. You could consider doing something like that. I don't want to bore you with the statistics. The chairman did a great job of all the percentages. But once again, I think we're in some need of a residential tax break. I think there are other methods that I won't get into tonight where you don't have to charge the full 2.5% for the tax levy, which you're entitled to under the Proposition 2.5. There are other ways you could perhaps take a look at some different policies that we've mentioned before, and tonight's not the night to get into it. But once again, I appreciate you listening to me, and hopefully you'll take some of my recommendations under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sakara. One item I think it is, a tax break for residents is always something that I think is something we would hope to do. And having exemptions and having programs for seniors, for our veterans, for disabled, is something I absolutely support. But I think there is a balance. We are not heavily commercially based in the town of Walpole. It would be our hope to have a larger commercial base in our town. But 88% does rely on the residential property values. I'm comfortable with a slight shift. I think more than that, I think it's something, this is what we do every year. I think keeping it, for the same for 9 years, it is time. The market has shown that it is time with the difference in the increase of property values. I mean, that is something great for the homeowner, 10% increase in property values, but it is difficult when it comes to the tax bill. Does anyone else have any other comments that they would like to add?
Makes sense.
All right. This is, a public hearing, so Mr. Pia, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. You missed the beginning of the meeting, in which we did ask for comments to be kept to about 3 minutes and to stay on topic for this portion of the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I will keep it brief. I'm just providing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not here to get into, Richard Pila, Berkeley Drive. I'm not here to talk about tax shifts, but my reason for compiling this information is to kind of, we all think we know our towns. Sometimes we know them, we do not know them as well as we think. And so I wanted to provide some information in terms of Walpole's population and income profile. This is pretty much self-explanatory, but it shows you how the town has grown from the 2010 census up to the 2028 projections. As you can see, the town, even though there are many young families moving into Walpole, the town is getting older. The percentage of residents 65 years and older currently is 21.2%. In 2028, that number will be 24.2%. If you look at the line median household income, I highlighted what the median household income is for people that are 75 and older. And as you can see, as people get older, their income is reduced. But expenses continue to rise. In 2023, the median household income for people that are 75 plus is $59,106. If you take that number and you reduce the property tax, and you reduce that number by what the cost of inflation has done to every American family on average, and then you subtract your state and federal income taxes, there's not a whole lot left over for savings, for other expenditures. And so in terms of what Mr. Zuccharo mentioned, I think it really is everybody's responsibility to look at how we can keep people who have lived in this town, raised their families in this town, want to continue living in this town, to do whatever we can to make sure that they are able to continue living in this town and not be priced out. And my last comment is that I had mentioned when I ran for assessor that we should be looking at our commercial tax base and look at ways of which to increase the commercial tax base, so the burden doesn't continue to fall on the residential taxpayers. So that's all I wanted to say, Madam Chair, and I hope that this body and any other body in town that is responsible in some way in the management of the town to look at ways of increasing our commercial tax base so that we can we can increase or decrease the residential tax base. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments this evening. You may come up. I just want to add one piece of information as well. The committee, Community and Economic Development, they did meet on this matter of the Walpole, the 2024 tax classification. They voted and supported to not shift the tax rate beyond the current percentage of 1.275. So they were not able to join us this evening, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that this evening.
My name is Linda Coletti. I live in Precinct 4. I want you to please take into consideration everything these gentlemen stated this evening, because for the seniors who make under a certain amount of money, we're in tough times, more so than most people know. And I'll tell you why. We have no place to go. With the 3 to 7 year wait to get into a senior housing, and there's no affordable housing, so we're stuck in our homes, although that's my sanctuary, my home, and it is for most seniors that are in my financial category. It's my sanctuary. I don't want to leave. So please do whatever you can to help us seniors. We really need you. We really need you. We've paid all these years our fair share. give us a break now, because our hands are tied. So we're depending on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening, and thank you for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Robert Mulvey. I live at Plimpton Street. And just a voice of support for it's outside the tax rate topic, but maybe continuing to investigate moving from the Norfolk county pension system to the
We will
state.
actually, if you'd like to remain, we will have our open forum in a little
Yes.
bit after this. Right now, we're solely speaking about the tax,
Okay,
the tax rate.
thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this matter?
Good evening. My name's Henry Baker. I live over on Pemberton Street, Precinct 7. I'm here specifically to talk about raising of the tax rate again this year. Is that okay? I can talk about that?
If it is on topic, you certainly can. We just
Okay.
ask that you.
Well, it has to deal with the raising of the tax rate. And recently, I was talking with a good friend, a guy who's about 75 years of age. He's a Vietnam vet, saw combat over there. He's a lifelong resident, and the guy is not in very good health. And recently, he was forced out of town. Okay, he couldn't pay the increase in the rent, went up substantially, almost a third. And he had to move out of this town, move into another town, go from an apartment into renting a room. And part of that is a result of the continual heavy tax and the raising of rates over the years. But I've met so many people that have told me that they've moved out of town because it was too expensive. I recently attended that presentation that we had over the senior center last year about Christmas time. There were a good 70 people in the room. We listened to all the programs that the people from Town Hall had to tell us about. I didn't see any happy faces in that room. I didn't have a sense there was a program there that did anything for us. The only program that made any sense at all was a deferred tax thing, but I think they put a lien on your property, and then you had to pay, you still had to pay an interest on whatever you're deferring. And, to my thinking, the only real answer to any of these problems that seniors see is simply to downsize and move out. Try to find, sell your property for whatever you can get and get into something else. But that's a sad thing to do to people that have lived in a town all their lives and would prefer to stay here. There have been 10 years of increases in the tax rate every year since 2014. And that's 10 years of consistent taxing, okay, where the rates have gone up. And over those 10 years, it seems like every year I hear that there was an overage, or they taxed more than what they needed to pay the bill, so now there was found money or simply in excess of what they really needed. I don't understand how that works, because we all know what the assessed property value is in this town. If you add it all up on the computer, you'll get a number. And if you take the tax rate that you're at currently and you apply that against, and you look at the budget, okay, which we all exist, and we forecast out the budget for the next year, we know what the expenses are that have to be met to run this town. And when we run the rate against the current tax base, we see that we're looking for more money than we need to actually fund the budget. So how do we come in and then say we need to raise the rate when we have the money? It's there, okay? And it's simple math. It needs a computer to do it, but it's simple once the program is written. So it doesn't quite seem ethical to me to do this constant thing of raising the rate and then declaring a surplus at the end of the year. That always tells us that something's wrong.
Mr. Baker,
Okay?
I'm going to ask that if you could wrap up your comments as we
Okay, I'm
do
going to
this.
wrap it up in a second.
3 minutes for each one.
Yeah, well, I got a short, and I'm almost at the bottom of the
All right,
sheet,
very
okay?
good.
Okay, so it just doesn't seem right to me, but most board members here were elected with less than 15% of the vote. And in some instances, I think the last election was less than 10%. And the problem is we have a lack of diversity of opinion on this board. Everybody
Okay,
votes
Mr.
the
Baker,
same way.
at this point, you're getting off topic. We
Well,
appreciate you coming here.
but it
So if
has
there's
to deal
something
with the
add to tax
process.
classification. I do not control voting in this town. I
Okay.
wish there was many more individuals that
2
came out
points.
to vote. So please
Okay.
wrap it up.
One of the points is there needs to be a change And I would suggest that, hey, we're from Walpole, we can decide how we vote. Mail everybody a ballot so we can get beyond the 9 or 10% voting, so that we can at least know there's a mandate. Because right now, 90% of the people aren't
We're talking
voting.
about tax.
And the second idea is let's have all the candidates run in every election so that somebody else has a chance of getting elected.
All right, so
Okay,
thank you very much
that's
for
it.
your comments
Okay,
this
thank you.
evening. I appreciate you coming. This is a public hearing. If there is anyone else that would like to speak, I would invite you to come up. Otherwise, at this point,
I can make a motion. You ready? I'll move to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is a vote, 400.
And if you'd like, I can make a motion to adopt a shift of 1.30 with a residential factor of .9604 for fiscal year 2024.
I'll second that. Jack, are those the right numbers?
9.9604?
That's what I said. Yep.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure before we voted that number. I know that's the number that affects you, so, okay. I second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote.
No,
Of 410.
a 3-1.
310, thank you. I'm used to number 5. And then there's one more motion.
Oh, yes, I buried it. What's the other motion? What's the other motion?
For the town administrator to submit the results.
Sure, a motion to authorize the town administrator to submit the results of this hearing on behalf of the Select Board to the Massachusetts Division of Local Services Gateway System.
Second.
Motion? Sorry.
No, I think that's all we need. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a vote, 400. Is that all you needed for this? Yes. All right, thank you. No, and I know, Glenn, you have to...
I do have to go, yeah.
All right, the next item on our is for new business.
Open forum.
What do you do open forum?
We have open forum. I'm sorry, I went by open forum as all my notes. The next item, it is past the time of 7:30. It is now open forum. If there is anyone that would like to speak in open forum, they may come forward.
And you're welcome to stay and watch the rest of our meeting, but if you're here for tax classification only, we're okay if you walk out, so we understand.
Jim, I don't know if you want to look down? Are you seeing down at the end?
I can slide down.
And as far as open forum, it is items that you may bring forward to us. You will not find discussion amongst the board, but we welcome you to speak.
Good evening, Robert Mulvey, Plimpton Street. Again, related to the topic of property taxes, I just think one item would be to try to reduce the obligations on the public pension system under the Norfolk County current operation, and maybe investigate if we could do better under the Commonwealth. I believe the town of Norwood participates in the state pension system, and maybe there'd be some savings for the town, so that wouldn't be so much pressure on the residents to pay higher taxes. So just something maybe to start thinking about, because we face it every year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak for open forum?
Yes, please. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm Grace Lincoln, Precinct 2. Since we are here at a tax review meeting, and the object is to lower taxes by any means possible, I'd like to ask on the record if the elected Town Select Board is going to assemble the 8-person pension committee that was favorably voted on May 2021 at the town meeting to review our pension plan and save our town potential money.
So let me respond this way. Because this is open forum, and the state of Massachusetts has an ethics law that says we're not allowed to respond to items that have come forward. So I'm not going to respond to what you just asked.
I understand
I can point out that I know that question has been asked before, and I know that the town administrator did respond.
and, leave it at that.
Thank you,
if
Mr.
need a copy
Galvin.
of that.
The question was proposed in writing to the Select Board, and then it was also emailed to the Select Board. It was not addressed to the Town Administrator, and because it is in the hands of the Select Board to assign and to appoint that committee, and the fact that it was voted on favorably at a town meeting and should be then fulfilled, because that was what was voted upon, I would ask that you would again review it and get back to me at another time that's appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the audience that would like to come forward for open forum?
Richard Peeler, Berkeley Drive. I wasn't prepared to, I didn't come here this evening to talk about this, but since the subject has been brought up by two of my fellow residents, I do want to point out something. I responded, sent an email, and I know you cannot respond. Prior to the fall town meeting, our town administrator sent out an email to all of the RTMs. And in response to comments that I had made in my presentation as to why the town should move from the Norfolk County pension system to the state pension system, every single item in that communique between the town administrator and the members of town meeting was incorrect and misleading. In that communique, our town administrator said that there was a difference between and I'm trying to remember what it was, a mandatory versus a directory vote. I checked with the Secretary of State's office. I've checked with people who know a lot about town meeting, much more than I do. I checked the Secretary of State's guide to town meeting in the Commonwealth. There is no distinction. A vote by town meeting is a vote. There's no distinction between mandatory or directory. So I do take exception. It is my intent to pursue this with the Select Board. I will provide additional information in support of the position that I have presented to this board. And for town meeting to take a vote, and that vote not being upheld by the Select Board, which is bound by our town charter to act, I think is what's the purpose of having town meeting? If town meeting is going to vote on an issue, they are the legislative body of our town government. You are the executive body of our town government. And it's your responsibility to fulfill what the legislative branch so directs.
So I would
So
just
that's my
say
only
thank you for
comment.
coming in, though I do disagree with everything you just said.
That's fine.
I agree with everything that was in the town administrator's letter, and this correspondence has been going back and forth, so if you've got more information you'd like us to read, please send it on, so,
I will do that tomorrow. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to add on that subject, if you do decide to form a committee, once again, I would volunteer my services to that committee at no cost, since I was the previous administrator of the state fund and a consultant in the Norfolk County Pension Fund. And I did contact Representative Ted Phillips' office, spoke to his legal staff and his chief of staff, and there is a mechanism in place to transfer your assets to the state pension fund. It'd have to go through home rule petition, then you would have to reach out to the local state delegation for special permission to do so, and they would grant it to you. However, keep in mind, if you do that, the state would invest your funds but you would be responsible for the administration, and you would have to create a 5-member retirement board and a staff as well to handle the administration. And the only other point I was remiss in stating earlier on the why I favored a better increase for the residents, as I stated last meeting, last year, the residents are kind of limited to what they can write off. Businesses can always pass on their tax increase to the end consumer within reason, which is their customers, and multi-dwellings can increase their rent. I just wanted to add that one last comment. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Thank you. If there's anyone else here to speak on open forum? All right, then we are going to move on to new business. First one is a vote of a request for Walpole Chamber of Commerce for their annual Santa Parade and tree lighting on Saturday. Thank you for everyone who's here this evening.
I'll make a motion to approve the request of the Walpole Chamber of Commerce to hold the annual Santa Parade and tree lighting on Saturday, November 25th, 2023. It's always a great event, and you get to see a lot of people from Walpole and in the nearby towns.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is a 3-0-0 vote. All right, and the next item of business, I think we have members from the 300th Committee, Celebration Committee that would like to come forward before we take this item up.
How are you? Bill Buckley, Chair of the Walpole 300th Committee, joined by Katie Turco-Beatty, the Vice Chair. This is just a perfunctory entertainment license which we filled out to have our laser show on the 16th of September, which will be... December, not September. We just had a meeting, so a little late in the day, which will be held at 6 o'clock and 8:30 directly behind us out here on the field. Let's take this opportunity to thank your staff, especially Patrick, Jim, and the police and fire, and public safety, and Billy Maintenance for having a really productive meeting with us the other day and helping us with the planning. It's coming together rapidly, so we're excited. So hope you say yes.
Does anyone have any questions concerning this? I'm excited for a laser show.
Yeah, I would just comment that I think very excited about what you got going on here, Bill and Katie. And also thank you for all the great work you're doing beyond this. It's coming together quite nicely, and you guys have done a great job, so thank you.
Thank you. We're very lucky to have a really collaborative relationship, and I did kind of test launch the idea of a laser show to the 3rd grade at the Boyden School the other day when I spoke to them, and they were very excited.
So this is the first kind of event to kick off
A year long, so we're 299 years old as of December 10th, so this will kick off our year-long celebration of 300, so very
Great.
good. Thank you very much.
So I'll make a motion to approve the request of the Walpole 300th Committee for a one-day entertainment permit on December 16th, 2023, from 6 to 9 p.m. at Stone Field for a laser show with pyrotechnics to kick off the Walpole 300th celebration.
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is a vote, 3-0-0.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good
you
night.
for all your work.
We look forward to your next update as the plans continue for 300 celebrations.
January, February, perhaps, after.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Next item is consent agenda.
Consent agenda, motion to approve the consent agenda items as listed on the November 14th agenda. Do we have a second?
Oh, second, sorry.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote, 3-0-0. Next item on the agenda is the town administrator's update.
Sure, just 3 items here. We have a few upcoming meetings with the FinCom. One is this Thursday with the department heads, police, fire, and DPW. The second meeting is Tuesday, 11/28, out at the Byrd Middle School with the school committee and FinCom. Town hall will be closed the day after Thanksgiving, and best of luck to the cross-country, field hockey, high school football team, and the 4th grade football team who are going into the Super Bowl this weekend.
Awesome.
I had to get that plug in. That's it.
And I also want to give a thank you to Melissa Bingham, our Walpole Veterans agent. I was able to attend the Veterans ceremony last weekend, which was well attended, and she did a phenomenal job. I think it's her 2nd year doing it, and it was a great event to attend. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to ask or add?
I'm good.
Nope.
All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote, 300. Thank you very much.
Thank you.